Howdy readers, my name's Jason and this is Chapter and Verse. This is my very first proper video and I'm going to do the Booktube Newbie Tag. So this tag was created, I've got my notes here, initially by Brenda C. Anyway, and if I can figure out how to link to her URL in the box below the video, I will do that. So without further ado, question number 1. Why did you start this channel? Community is the most important thing. For readers, having a community of readers is as important as having good books to read, in my view. It's why we have book clubs. It's why we take English classes. We can never have too many outlets for discussing books. Through discussion, we come to understand the books that we read and love even better. Question 2. What are some fun and unique things that you can bring to Booktube? Well, so for starters, I was a bookseller at Barnes & Noble for 6 years. There are a lot of former booksellers on Booktube, but in addition to having been a bookseller, I was also a college English teacher. So that's a fun thing about me. I'll be spending most of my time discussing books that are a bit more obscure, I suppose. Books that I'm not seeing discussed very much on Booktube. Books like Raising Holy Hell by Bruce Olds. This is a terrific novel about the abolitionist John Brown. I still remember the first time I read this. My wife and I were in a coffee shop. I read 2 pages. I put the book down. I picked up my phone and texted a friend of mine. And I just told him, I said, listen, you need to order this book now. You need to read this immediately. It's that good. And he did. And he gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. If you're a fan of Cormac McCarthy, you need to read this. So I'll be talking about books that not a lot of people talk about. Question 3, what are you most excited about for this new channel? So the thing I'm most excited for in starting this channel is getting to know and getting to just correspond with and learn more about the Booktubers whose channels I've become kind of obsessed with over the last couple of months since discovering Booktube in the first place. Booktubers like Jasmine at Jasmine's Reads, Jenny at insert literary pun here, Neil Griffiths, whose most recent novel I have not read yet, but I desperately want to. When I discovered he had a Booktube channel, I started watching it and I haven't stopped. So Peter at Peter Likes Books, because he's hilarious, and we live in a world where laughter is becoming more the best medicine than it's ever been. And so any booktuber who can make me laugh is gold. Jean at Bookish Thoughts, her channel is fabulous as well. Question 4. Why do you love reading? So this is complicated. And I think it's maybe best answered for me with an analogy. So if I'm a vine, right? If I'm a morning glory vine creeping along the ground, I tend to think of books as trellises. So they raise me up from the earth. They teach me how to find the light. Who wouldn't want to have something that essentially is training them how to be their best self? And that's what books are for me. And the other thing about books is that they take us so deeply into the psychologies of characters and situations that we can't but learn more about ourselves as a result. I really feel like great novels reveal us to ourselves. Question 5. What book or series got you into reading? So, when I was a kid, I read this book here. This is Bunnicula by Deborah and James Howe. It's a book about a vampire bunny who is taken into a home, and there's a cat who lives in this house named Chester, who is neurotic, and he reads too much Edgar Allan Poe, and he becomes paranoid that the bunny's a vampire, and he feels it's his job to destroy the bunny before the bunny destroys the family. It's sweet, it's funny. It was also in that weird way because the cat was reading Poe. Kind of it put literature, right, Edgar Allan Poe, on my radar as a kid. I've probably read this book a dozen times in my life. It had two very good sequels, The Celery Stalks at Midnight and Holiday Inn, and then some subpar sequels, but Bunnicula is the book that really got me into reading. And then as a teenager, when I was 18, I read Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Now, this book is mentioned frequently in this tag. I read this on my own. It was not for class. This wasn't the edition. The edition I read was a faded red dust jacket with a quill on the cover from my local library. And the reason this book was so important to me was because it was the first novel that ever made me cry. And it had never occurred to me that a book could do that. And so as a result, right, at the end of the specific chapter in the book, making me cry, it alarmed me. Books, Bunnicula, the Dragonlance Chronicles that I read when I was a teenager, these books had always just been good stories to me. In the end, they had always just been ink on the page. And this showed me that they could be something much more, and that they could invite me in a way that left me disarmed and emotionally invested to a degree that made me uncomfortable and made me want to keep going. This book was rather life-changing in that way. Question 6. What question would you ask your favorite booktubers? So I'm not going to ask a bookish question, but instead I'm curious to know, what song are you obsessed with right now? Question 7. What challenges do you think starting a booktube channel will be most difficult to overcome? And so there's a couple of things. One, the technology side of things. I'm having just a lot of trouble figuring out how to make videos and edit videos and upload videos, and that's proving to be as difficult as I feared it would be. And the second thing is, how am I going to curb the desire to binge watch Booktube, which I've been doing. I've been binge watching it since discovering it a couple of months ago. But I've been binge watching it in large part so I can better understand how the community operates, I suppose. I want to make sure that I understand the etiquette of Booktube, by which I mean, how can we be honest and gracious at the same time? It seems to me very important that we do that, and it's not easy to do. So I've been studying the videos to that end, in addition, of course, to just watching them because it's enormous fun. Question 8. When did you start reading? I have absolutely no idea. Question 9. Where do you read? So I usually read in bed before I go to sleep. Actually, I always read in bed before I go to sleep. And I often read sitting downstairs in our library here at home, which is where I am right now. You'll get a tour of it eventually. And then lastly, question 10, what kind of books do you like to read? So I'm tempted to say good books, period. But I know that this is more kind of what genre are you interested in. I mostly read literary fiction. My favorite contemporary writers would be Peter Carey, Tim Winton, Marilyn Robinson, Sarah Waters, Howard Jacobson, Cormac McCarthy. So these are the writers who really light the fire in me. Anyway, so those are the 10 questions. It's a pleasure to be part of this community. I can't wait, actually, to get to know you people. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you soon.